For a very long time, it seemed as if we had a choice between destroying the planet and an ecological sustainability, or in between war or a peaceful justice on Earth. Today, we slowly realize that we never really had that choice. Albert Einstein said that already about 3 generations ago, the purest form of madness is to leave everything in the old and at the same time to hope that something will change.
Since then, we have not really changed, and I always wondered why.
In our new millennium, we are now experiencing the shift from fossil fuels to sustainable solar energy. Today, we have big tasks in front of us, but we already have the right tools in our hands. We should now prepare to be able to feed more and more people in the future. We could turn this planet into a fertile Garden of Eden, instead of harming our ecosphere, because today we know almost all the ecological connections. The solar energy will perhaps play the most important role in this. The most important factor, however, is our energy awareness. With relatively little effort, even the kitchen stove can operate directly with the sun. In our new millennium, we are now experiencing the shift from fossil fuels to sustainable solar energy. Just as the technology used to develop from wood in campfires to charcoal in steam engines and petroleum in engines up to today's solar techniques, we are also experiencing a development of consciousness from the ethnocentric to egocentric to the world-centric consciousness. And here we find the reasons why nothing much has changed. In ethnocentric consciousness, it is still being attempted to make all individuals as equal and as to conform as much as possible, which doesn't work, and only leads us again to new forms of fascism, which then begin to discriminate marginal groups. A human childhood disease which unfortunately continues to thrive. In modern egocentric consciousness, on the other hand, individuality is the most important thing. But it ends in this all-destroying globalization. Power obsession and greediness are here the typical pathological signs of these teenage-like times of humanity, in which our ethical values are first sacrificed, and then perhaps also our entire species. Today, our childish drive to play with power mutates into a dangerous gameplay. How thoughtlessly we play around with bioweapons, gen technology, nuclear power, and particle accelerators. we easily are getting into dangerous dependencies. Antibiotics, computers, plastic waste, financial markets, and electrosmog. Every single one of these vices will damage us. In the upcoming age of the world-centric consciousness, we recognise in a new form that we are never separated from everything. We are all one. The exploitation of globalization, driven by greedy economic interests, is now changing into responsibility for our future generations. At this point, we realise that we only damage ourselves, and that we should stop hurting ourselves. And only there it becomes a need to be able to live sustainably and ecologically. However individual we may be, we all live on the same planet and are part of this big ecosystem that keeps us all alive. We only will be able to survive this suicide-threatened globalization if we all stand together and seek out the best solutions for everyone. All the suffering and injustice that we have ever done to other beings still weighs on our worldly soul. To this day, we torture and kill creatures thoughtlessly and mercilessly. Only through an all-embracing respect for life will we finally be able to stop this. And only through love will we be able to award and forgive all these cruelties.
Many times I went to demonstrations against nuclear power plants, signed one petition after another, and wrote critical articles. I always just wanted to live the way I thought was right. That's why I developed my passion, at least in the energy sector, to create many practical solutions with which I can live very comfortably and independently without big costs. I thought to myself, if everyone would simply stop getting the electricity out from sockets, then already today many of our problems would simply be solved.
Like nasty mosquitoes, we have ruthlessly sucked away the precious fossil resources from the earth, only to mindlessly crucify the blood of the earth and burn it in our wild tumult of a collective megalomania. The whole force of our modern society is based on this stolen energy. Hardly anyone has ever thought about adequately giving back something to the earth. Because if we were to try, the oil price would surely already be many times higher than the current costs for solar energy.
This film is here to show you some amazing solar possibilities I have built myself. I hope you will be just as astonished as myself about what everyone can do just with the sun. And I wish that my passion will inspire you to try the same, or at least recognize the solar possibilities and the financial framework as very realistic. From typical e-car components, we have rebuilt this antique tractor into perhaps the most modern solar tractor. It has over 600 amp hours in lead batteries and a very strong 8 kilowatt electric motor. The 4 solar modules on the roof charge 500 watt directly into these fat batteries. Here in Spain it is already enough, and this battery is sufficient for a whole working day.
I have never believed in atomic energy. From the beginning, it seemed far too irrational and too risky for me. The fact that we obviously did not really learn much from Chernobyl and Fukushima leaves me wondering whether the military, together with its whole lobby, is secretly manipulating things so that they can generate uranium weaponry. All 429 nuclear power plants on this planet, with a total output of 364 gigawatts, could be completely replaced by a ridiculously small area of 10,000 kilometers square in solar cells. This would cover 11% of the world's total electricity demand. That means, with only about the land area of the small Mediterranean island Cyprus, the worldwide 429-fold risk of a nuclear accident and all these 336,000 tons of highly radioactive nuclear waste, which has been produced to this day, would be simply eliminated. Radiant waste is still a serious problem for another 6,000 generations to come. Our Earth's crust is too much in motion to find a safe depository for the next 200,000 years. There will never be such a depository because there is no final solution for radioactivity on Earth. Let us hope now that radioactivity is also good for something. The best thing would be to bring all the radioactive waste to where there is a lot of radiation anyway, to the sun. But that too would be much too expensive, which brings us already back again to the sun.
It had always been a dream, since my youth, to ride on a motorbike without smoke and noise. I was able to fulfill this dream now 30 years later. A small 20 amp hour LiFePO battery with 48 volts lasts only for 30 kilometer range, which is completely sufficient for most of my short trips into town. The powerful 3 kilowatt engine creates 40 miles an hour, The whole motorbike is recharged by my self-invented solar system using direct solar energy.
If we recharge our electric vehicles directly from solar modules, we achieve a much greater energy efficiency. It's because of the much lower losses that would occur during each voltage transformation in the normal grid system. Isn't it a scandal that during the transport of electricity supply, in the high voltage and transformer stations, half of all the energy is lost? Only decentralized and direct use, as in solar systems, improves the efficiency extensively. It is an old fairy tale that solar energy would never be enough, because the sun gives us 20,000 times more energy every second than we currently consume. A single second of sunshine would be enough to cover the entire energy demand of today's world population for 6 hours. Here we have the largest atomic fusion reactor ever, even at a wonderfully safe distance of 150 million kilometres, and do not want to use it? How blind and stupid can we be to continue to waste the precious fossil mineral resources, or even to invest a further cent into this terrifying technology of nuclear power? If the solution of all our energy problems shines so obviously into our faces, we are quite blind. For cloudy days, for the nights, and for very large consumers, as well as for electric mobility, we have to use batteries as electricity storage. They allow us to release enormous amounts of energy. We can, of course, also use it more sensibly. This solar welding machine can be used to weld metal with pure solar energy, completely independent of the grid. 4-car batteries supply more power than is needed. With 400 ampere hour, you can really weld for a whole day. Slowly we realise that there are no logical, but only financial and power political interests behind mainstream current energy use, which is why the energy turnaround is so slow. The e-car was market ready more than 100 years ago. The entire solar cell industry was purchased by the large oil companies 30 years ago. The insatiable greed and power obsession of this egocentric age has prevented the logical development as long as it could. But now a whole new era has begun. Humanity is now freed from the restrictions of these old, narrow-minded capitalistic thoughts. We as humanity are growing up slowly. And we finally have to begin to think and act for our children and grandchildren. Solar collectors for hot water and warm air, and a modern energy-conscious building architecture, which use solar radiation for heat generation, are to be preferred because of the bad efficiency of heat generation by electricity. Even in cold England, such solar collectors pay off after only a few years. The complete supply by green electricity would be an important aim. However, I would like to point out that first we should focus our attention more on the possibilities of more sensible and more economical use of grid energy, then on the ecological supply of all the amount of energy consumed today. Here we could very quickly achieve much more. Today's crazy energy consumption must not be the starting point for an ecological energy turnaround. Currently, we consume worldwide about 161,857 litres of oil per second. We use too many lights at night, eat too many buildings in winter, we drive and fly too much, we eat too much, we buy too much, we want too much. Our whole civilization is in the constant increase in consumption of unnecessary necessities. The earth has enough for the needs of every human being, but not for his greed. Mahatma Gandhi. Humanity is increasingly pressing the gas pedal, not only in the transport sector, but also in the heating and the production of food and consumer goods. By far, the largest CO2 producer nowadays is the meat industry. We consume much too much energy everywhere, even very inefficiently and unconsciously. That's where I see the main problem of our whole era. We surround ourselves with more and more devices that emit electromagnetic waves. The risks are well known, but are gladly played down. Direct effects of electrosmog are still difficult to detect, because today nervousness, sleep disturbances, and immune defences, and burnouts are already very common. In general, cables for data transmission usually require much less power than radio connections, which would only contribute to the already serious amount of electrosmog radiation everywhere. We should always take the utmost care with the consuming devices we use the most. An effective lighting system with LEDs can be up to 90% more economical than conventional light bulbs. What we need now are learning fields to develop energy consciousness. Small independent solar systems are an excellent way to gain an energy-conscious mindset. Here we practice how to save energy again, in order to use our resources thoughtfully. Before, we also had to collect our firewood ourselves and carry it home. But today, money-hungry energy companies are fooling us with the idea that unlimited energy flows out of every wall socket forever. The heating systems are also automated in such a way that the consumer ultimately senses his energy needs only on his bank account, which is not exactly conducive to our energy consciousness. Battery-powered machines are especially suitable to use with solar energy. The batteries can be either charged up directly from solar modules, or we can use these devices with a cable directly from our 12-volt system. Inverters can also expand the variety of machines we can use with standard 230-volt devices, which sometimes are very difficult to convert to 12-volt. When we buy products, we should always pay attention to their energy efficiency. This refrigerator, for example, requires only 35 watt, about a third of a conventional refrigerator. There are also enormous differences in computers. Some CPUs need 85 watt, others only 35 watt. If we look at our development from the industrial age and up to the atomic age, followed by today's information age, we recognise that we have the real possibility to better organise ourselves in the sense of a new world-centric consciousness. Only a strong world community will be able to effectively overcome aggressive or ignorant governments, but also try to help them out of their old egoistic mind structures. Only by fair worldwide agreements for all countries will we be able to ensure peaceful coexistence, which would give us enormous financial resources, which otherwise are only consumed by the military, etc. Money, which today is so urgently needed for environmental protection.
Leute, passt mal auf, ihr macht viel zu viel Krieg. Mir gefällt das gar nicht. Warum tut ihr das?
The supply of food and energy will become increasingly decentralized, but at the same time, create ever stronger networks in order to support everyone. Also, the money system will become unnecessary, one day replaced by direct barter and trade. The transport sector could become much more efficient through the collective use of electric vehicles. And even the school system would change its aim from maximum outcome to environmental sustainability education and energy efficiency. Solar energy will undoubtedly play here the biggest main role in the future. Looking at all this from an egocentric consciousness, then it could just all be pure utopia, but with a new world-centric consciousness. It is the only necessary and important step to continue to survive on this planet.
Eigentlich nicht. Sie braucht eigentlich andere
The question, why we still do not really change enough, only can be answered around this new step of our consciousness. Because with this we understand the fact that we have no choice, but the duty to keep us all from a collective suicide.